Tom shifted his weight, the gift box heavy in his calloused hands. His work boots felt out of place among the polished shoes surrounding him at the university graduation ceremony. But pride swelled in his chest as Lily's name echoed across the quad. For 6 years he'd worked double shifts at the recycling yard, coming home exhausted but satisfied, knowing his wife was one step closer to her real estate degree. The congratulatory card tucked into his jacket pocket contained the down payment for her first office. Money saved one aluminum can at a time. When Lily approached in her cap and gown, Tom's smile faltered. Her eyes held something cold, professional, distant. "You've served your purpose," she said, handing him an envelope. The world tilted as Tom opened it. Divorce papers, dated today. Around them, families celebrated new beginnings while his life collapsed into a single devastating moment. The recycling yard came alive with the first light of dawn. Tom Grayson breathed in the familiar scent of metal, earth, and honest work as he unlocked the main gate. 22 years at Westside Recycling had taught his nose to distinguish aluminum from steel, copper from brass, all from 30 paces. He checked his watch, 4:45 a.m. Early even by his standards, but today wasn't ordinary. Today, Lily graduated. Tom ran his hand along a stack of carefully sorted medals, each categorized by type and grade. The yard might look like chaos to outsiders, but there was a precise order to everything, a value that most people overlooked. "Morning, boss," Ray called, crossing the yard with 2 steaming cups. "Thought you might need this. Big day, huh?" Tom accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. 6 years of night classes while working full-time. She's something else. "You're something else, too," Ray said, surveying the neatly organized yard. "Most husbands wouldn't work double shifts for 6 years straight." Tom shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just did what needed doing." "That developer was in here again yesterday," Ray mentioned casually. "Looking for you." Something tightened in Tom's chest. "Mark Whitfield?" "That's him. Real estate hotshot. Asked all kinds of questions about the property." Tom's jaw clenched. He'd seen Lily talking with Whitfield at her school functions. The way she'd looked at him, animated, impressed, was nothing like how she looked at Tom these days. "Yard's not for sale," Tom said, his voice firmer than necessary. "I know that," Ray replied. "Just thought you should know he's sniffing around." Tom nodded, pushing the unease aside. Today wasn't about Whitfield or property values or the growing distance he felt when Lily came home late from study groups. Today was about celebration. The boutique's glass door felt impossibly delicate under Tom's work-roughened hand. Inside, everything gleamed. Polished surfaces, spotless glass cases, carefully arranged displays. He glanced down at his clothes, suddenly aware of the contrast between his worn jeans and the store's pristine interior. "Can I help you?" The saleswoman's smile was professional, her eyes taking quick inventory of his appearance. "Looking for a graduation gift," Tom said, standing straighter. "For my wife." "I see." Her tone shifted slightly. "And what type of gift were you thinking?" Tom reached into his pocket, pulling out a carefully folded paper. "She's always wanted a Cartier pen, for signing real estate contracts." He'd been saving for 18 months, setting aside a portion of every paycheck. The saleswoman's expression warmed with genuine surprise. "That's a thoughtful choice. The Santos de Cartier?" Tom nodded, relieved she understood. "That's the one." As she unlocked the display case, Tom caught his reflection in the mirror behind her. The contrast between his weathered face and the luxury surrounding him couldn't be starker. Lily belonged in places like this. Lately, he wondered if he still belonged with her. It's an investment piece, the saleswoman explained, placing the pen in a velvet-lined box. Something she'll use throughout her career. Tom ran his finger along the pen's gold trim. Lily had pointed it out in a catalog years ago, back when her dream seemed impossible for a waitress married to a recycling yard manager. Back when they still talked about their dreams. "I'll take it," he said, pulling out his credit card, the one he kept for emergencies. This felt important enough. As the saleswoman processed his payment, Tom pictured Lily's face when she opened the gift. Maybe it would bring back that look from their early days, before she started seeing him as a stepping stone rather than a partner. "Lily?" Tom called, stepping into their modest ranch house. No answer. He'd taken a half day to get ready for the ceremony, but the silent house told him she wasn't home. He placed the small gift bag on the kitchen counter and noticed Lily's graduation gown hanging by the back door, pressed and perfect. Pride swelled in his chest despite everything. Moving through the living room, Tom paused at their wedding photo. 6 years younger, both of them beaming. Lily's waitress uniform had been replaced by student attire, then business casual as she'd landed her internship. With each change, she'd grown more distant. In their bedroom, subtle signs of transition were everywhere. Empty spaces on her side of the closet, favorite books missing from the nightstand. He'd noticed, but hadn't wanted to acknowledge what it might mean. Tom's phone buzzed with a text. "Meeting advisors before ceremony. See you there, L. No love you. No excitement about sharing the day. Just logistics." Tom showered and changed into his one good suit, purchased for funerals and weddings, now tight across the shoulders from years of physical labor. He polished his dress shoes, combed his hair, and practiced his smile in the mirror until it looked natural. The gift bag waited on the counter as he gathered his keys. Inside was more than a pen. It was years of sacrifice, of believing in someone else's dream, of loving without being loved back the same way. "She'll understand what it means," he told his reflection, needing to believe it was true. Tom locked the house and headed for his truck, nervousness and hope battling in his stomach. Whatever had been happening between them, today marked a new chapter. Maybe, just maybe, once the pressure of school was behind them, they could find their way back to what they'd been before. The ceremony started at 4. He had just enough time to get there early and find a good seat. The university quadrangle buzzed with celebration. Rows of black-robed graduates sat before the stage while proud families filled the surrounding chairs. Tom found a spot near the front, gift bag clutched carefully in one hand. His heart swelled with pride as Lily's name echoed through the speakers. She crossed the stage with confident strides, accepting her diploma with a poised smile. 6 years of sacrifices, every double shift, every missed weekend, every penny saved, crystallized in this moment. The ceremony concluded, and graduates dispersed to find their families. Tom stood, scanning the crowd for Lily's familiar face. When he spotted her, his smile faltered. She wasn't searching for him. She was deep in conversation with Mark Whitfield, the developer who'd been asking about the recycling yard. Tom approached slowly. Lily's eyes met his, then darted away. She whispered something to Mark, who nodded and stepped back, maintaining a professional distance. "Congratulations," Tom said, extending the gift. "I'm so proud of you." Lily's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you for coming, Tom." The formality in her voice chilled him. "Of course I came. Why wouldn't I be here? We need to talk." She glanced around at the celebrating families. "But not here." "I got you something," Tom insisted, offering the bag again. Lily took it with reluctance, setting it aside without opening it. Instead, She reached into her graduation gown and withdrew an envelope. I wanted to wait until after the ceremony. My lawyer said, "Lawyer?" Tom's voice cracked on the word. "This isn't working anymore, Tom." She pressed the envelope into his hand. "It hasn't been for a long time. You must have felt it too." Tom stared at the envelope, uncomprehending. "What is this?" "Divorce papers." Lily's voice was steady, rehearsed. "I've outgrown this life, your occupation. It's just not compatible with where I'm headed." The world tilted beneath Tom's feet. "My occupation? The one that paid for your degree?" Lily glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with his rising voice. "Please don't make a scene. The papers are straightforward. I'm keeping the house, and I need the recycling yard." "The yard?" Tom's confusion deepened. "Why would you want—" "Mark's development company needs that location," she said, nodding toward Whitfield. "It's the final piece for our shopping center project." "Our project?" The pieces clicked into place. Tom looked from Lily to Mark, understanding washing over him like ice water. "How long?" "That doesn't matter now," Lily said dismissively. "What matters is moving forward. I deserve this chance, Tom." Around them, families embraced and took photos. Tom stood frozen, divorce papers in one hand, watching his wife walk away with another man. And his livelihood. The law office of Daniel Reeves was still open when Tom arrived, the divorce papers crumpled in his fist. He hadn't planned to come here. His feet had simply carried him, numb with shock. "Mr. Grayson?" Reeves looked up from his desk. "I wasn't expecting you today." Tom placed the crumpled papers on the desk. "She served me at her graduation." Reeves' expression darkened. "Sit down, Tom." The attorney scanned the documents, his frown deepening with each page. "This is aggressive. The house, the yard. Did she give you any warning?" "None." Tom's voice sounded distant to his own ears. "She wants the recycling yard for her boyfriend's development project." "Mark Whitfield?" Reeves sat straighter. "Whitfield Development is behind this?" Tom nodded dully. "These terms are completely one-sided." Reeves spread the papers across his desk. "She's offering almost nothing in exchange for assets you've built over decades. She says I'm not compatible with her future." Tom's laugh held no humor. 22 years at that yard. Built it from nothing." "This is about more than the yard," Reeves said, examining a particular clause. "This shopping center would triple the property value overnight. They're trying to cut you out of millions." Tom hadn't thought about the money. He'd only felt the betrayal, the public humiliation, the casual dismissal of their life together. "Can she do this?" he asked finally. "Not without a fight," Reeves said, "but there's something about this property that concerns me." He tapped a section of the document. "She's explicitly requesting all subsurface rights." "Meaning?" Reeves leaned forward. "Tom, I think we need to have a private conversation about some aspects of your property that Mrs. Grayson might not fully understand." Reeves closed his office door and returned to his desk with a file that hadn't been there before. "The county surveyor contacted me last year about your property," he said, opening the file. "There's an abandoned oil pipeline system running beneath the recycling yard, installed in the 1950s, decommissioned in the 70s, never properly removed." Tom frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means liability." Reeves spread out several maps. "If anyone develops that land, they'll be responsible for proper removal or remediation of those lines. Could cost millions." Tom rubbed his temples. "And Lily doesn't know." "Her lawyer should have done better research." Reeves closed the file. "Here's what we can do. Accept her terms, with one modification. She assumes all subsurface liabilities with the property. It's standard language. Her lawyer won't question it. The implication hung in the air. Tom stared at the divorce papers, torn between justice and vengeance. Wouldn't that be, he searched for the word, vindictive? It would be protecting yourself, Reeves countered. They're trying to take everything you've built. This is simply allowing them to have exactly what they're asking for, including the responsibilities that come with it. The next morning, Tom stood in the recycling yard with Ray, watching the sunrise paint the mountains of sorted metal in golden light. She really ambushed you at graduation? Ray shook his head in disgust. After everything you did for her? It's done, Tom said quietly. I'm signing today. And the pipeline issue? Tom's jaw tightened. I'm giving her exactly what she wants. The property, the yard, everything beneath it. Ray nodded slowly. What will you do now? Tom looked out over the piles of discarded materials. Things others had thrown away, but that still held value if you knew how to see it. Start over, he said. Find something new to build. 3 months after the divorce, Tom unlocked the door to a small industrial space on the outskirts of town. Morning light filtered through dusty windows, illuminating a modest office area connected to a concrete-floored workspace. It's not much, he said, gesturing to the sparse surroundings. Mike Chen, a former supplier from Tom's recycling yard days, walked the perimeter, nodding thoughtfully. Location's perfect, though. Quick access to the interstate, reasonable rent. Tom spread blueprints across a folding table, the only furniture besides 2 metal chairs. I've been thinking about specialized transport for recyclable materials. Most companies use general haulers who don't understand proper segregation or handling. Creating contamination problems, Mike said, immediately grasping the concept. Exactly. Tom pointed to a diagram. I've designed custom compartments that maximize load efficiency while maintaining material separation. The settlement money should cover retrofitting 2 trucks to start. Mike examined the designs with growing interest. You know, I've got 3 clients who would pay premium rates for this kind of specialized service. They're constantly complaining about cross-contamination. Tom allowed himself a cautious smile. His expertise, the very knowledge Lily had dismissed as beneath her, might actually be valuable in ways he hadn't considered before. The big challenge will be cash flow, Tom admitted. Until we're established, we'll be running lean. Mike straightened, decision made. I've been looking to diversify my investments. What would you say to a partnership? My connections, your expertise. Tom looked around the empty space, seeing not what it was, but what it could become. For the first time since graduation day, he felt something like hope stirring in his chest. I'd say we have work to do, he answered, extending his hand. So you're guaranteeing less than 2% contamination rates? The operations manager for Sierra Recycling leaned forward, suddenly interested. Tom nodded confidently. Our handling protocols and specialized compartment design prevent cross-contamination. Your processors will see the difference immediately. The conference room felt worlds away from the recycling yard where Tom had spent most of his career. Yet discussing technical specifications with potential clients, he found himself speaking with an authority he'd never fully claimed before. And your drivers understand material classifications? The manager pressed. They're not just drivers, Tom explained. Each has recycling experience. They understand what they're transporting and why it matters. The manager exchanged glances with his colleagues. We've been losing thousands monthly on contaminated loads. If you can deliver what you're promising, we can, Tom said simply, and we'll document every load with full transparency. 20 minutes later, Tom walked out with a signed 6-month contract, his third major client in as many weeks. The parking lot was empty as Tom savored the moment. He pulled out his phone to call Mike with the good news, but paused, the triumph feeling somehow incomplete without someone to share it with on a personal level. His apartment was silent when he returned that evening. The contract sat on his kitchen table while he ate a microwave dinner alone. Professional success was filling his days, but his evenings remained as empty as they'd been since the divorce. Tom picked up the local newspaper, needing distraction. He'd barely opened it when a headline on the business page caught his eye. Whitfield Development announces West Side Shopping Center. The newspaper shook slightly in Tom's hands. There it was in black and white, an artist's rendering of an upscale shopping center on the very land where his recycling yard had stood. Mark Whitfield smiled confidently in the accompanying photo, one arm around Lily's waist. The caption identified her as partner in both business and life. Whitfield Development and LM Properties announce groundbreaking next month on the West Side Shopping Center, a $15 million retail development. Tom read the article twice, emotions churning. The project was being celebrated as transforming an industrial eyesore into a community asset. His life's work reduced to an eyesore. His phone rang, Ray's name on the screen. "You seen the paper?" Ray asked without preamble. "Just reading it now," Tom said, working to keep his voice neutral. "That son of a... Can you believe they're calling the yard an eyesore after what you built there?" Tom's gaze lingered on the project's timeline. "Groundbreaking next month. They're moving fast." "Too fast," Ray muttered. "You think they've done all the necessary surveys?" The pipeline. Tom hadn't thought about it since signing the divorce papers. "That's not my problem anymore," he said, though something tightened in his chest. "Still," Ray persisted, "seems like the kind of thing that might come back to bite them. Karma and all that." Tom folded the newspaper closed. Through his apartment window, he could see the lights of his new warehouse, where tomorrow their third truck would be delivered. "I'm building something new, Ray," he said finally. "Something that matters. Whatever happens with that land, it's in the past." But as he ended the call, Tom couldn't help wondering what might happen when Whitfield's crews broke ground over those abandoned pipelines. The thought brought no satisfaction, just a quiet certainty that some things couldn't remain buried forever. He turned back to the contract on his table, proof that his knowledge had value, that he himself had value, regardless of what Lily had believed. Perhaps that was the most important discovery of all. Tom stared at the spreadsheet, the numbers refusing to add up any differently, no matter how many times he recalculated. 6 invoices outstanding, almost $78,000 in services rendered, but not yet paid. Meanwhile, their fuel supplier was threatening to cut them off without immediate payment, and the lease on the third truck came due next week. "We knew the first year would be tight," Mike said, leaning against the doorframe of what had become a proper office over the past month. Whiteboards lined the walls with route plans and client lists. A dispatcher's desk sat in the corner with a radio system, signs of growth that made the current cash crunch all the more frustrating. "It's not the amount," Tom replied, rubbing his temples. "It's the timing. Sierra Recycling is 90 days late on their biggest invoice. They'll pay. They're just playing the float. The float doesn't help us with immediate expenses." Tom pushed back from his desk. "The drivers need their paychecks Friday. I'm not letting them down." Mike's expression tightened. "I've put everything I have into this venture, Tom." "If you're about to suggest we need more capital, I'm selling my truck," Tom interrupted. "Personal vehicle. Should cover payroll until these invoices clear." Mike's posture softened. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. Tom's voice was firm. These guys depend on us. Some of them have families. Outside the window, a driver was pressure washing one of their specialized transport vehicles. Tom had insisted on maintaining the fleet in immaculate condition. It was part of what set them apart from competitors. I'll make some calls, Mike said finally. See if I can accelerate any of these payments. Tom nodded, already calculating what his truck would bring at the dealership. The business was sound, their service offering unique, their execution precise. They just needed to survive long enough for their cash flow to stabilize. We're going to make it, Tom said, more to himself than to Mike. This is just part of building something that matters. Tom parked his newly purchased used sedan a block away, not wanting to be recognized. From this distance, he could observe the crowd gathered at the former recycling yard without being seen. A stage had been erected at one end of the cleared property. Rows of chairs faced it, filled with local business owners, politicians, and media. Large signs proclaimed, "Future home of Westside Shopping Center," with architectural renderings of an upscale retail complex. Tom leaned against a light pole, watching Lily ascend the stage in a tailored business suit. Mark Whitfield followed, addressing the crowd with practiced charm. Even from this distance, Tom could make out key phrases: community revitalization, economic opportunity, transformative development. His gaze traveled to the neat row of golden shovels propped against the stage. Soon they would break ground, unaware of what lay beneath the surface. A simple anonymous call or email would be enough. Just the words oil pipeline and environmental liability sent to the right authorities. The project would halt immediately for investigation. Lily and Mark's dreams would collapse like a house of cards. Tom's hand drifted to his phone. One call. That's all it would take. The crowd applauded as Mark and Lily posed for photos. Tom watched as they lifted the ceremonial shovels, positioning themselves for the groundbreaking moment. This day marks a new beginning, Mark announced, his voice carrying on the breeze. Tom's finger hovered over his phone. Revenge was within reach, a perfect karma for Lily's betrayal. But something stopped him. Not compassion for Lily, but recognition of what such an action would mean for him. Would he become someone who derived satisfaction from another's downfall, even if deserved? Was that the foundation he wanted for his new life? As the ceremonial shovels bit into the earth, Tom turned away. Let the consequences unfold naturally. He had his own path to forge. Tom Grayson? The voice stopped Tom as he walked through the small park adjacent to the development site. A bearded man sat on a bench, his possessions in a weathered backpack beside him. Recognition dawned slowly. Jack Harris. The man stood, offering a firm handshake despite his disheveled appearance. Been a minute, brother. Jack Harris. They'd served together in the Army Corps of Engineers years before Tom had started at the recycling yard. The man before him bore little resemblance to the sharp sergeant Tom remembered. You look like you could use a meal, Tom said, gesturing to a diner across the street. Over coffee and sandwiches, Jack's story emerged in matter-of-fact sentences: medical discharge after an injury, PTSD, divorce, job losses. Each setback described without self-pity. Got my VA benefits, but housing's impossible to find, Jack explained. Shelters are overcrowded. Most places won't rent to vets without perfect credit. You have skills, Jack. I remember what you could do with equipment. Jack shrugged. Hard to showcase skills in a job interview when you haven't had a shower in 3 days. Tom thought about his own journey, how close he'd come to letting bitterness define him after Lily's betrayal, How differently things might have gone without the opportunity Mike had offered. "I'm starting a transport company," Tom said suddenly. "Specialized recycling logistics. Could use someone who understands machinery maintenance." "I'm not looking for charity," Jack said stiffly. "It's not charity. It's an opportunity. Same one I got when I needed it." Tom leaned forward. "And maybe we could figure out something about your housing situation, too." As they talked further, an idea began forming in Tom's mind. Something bigger than revenge, bigger even than his company. Something that could transform lives that others had discarded, just like the materials he'd spent his career repurposing. "You know," Tom said thoughtfully, "there are a lot of vets in your situation, people with skills who just need a chance." Jack nodded, a spark of interest in his eyes. "More than you'd believe." For the first time since the divorce, Tom felt something bigger than himself taking shape, a purpose that might give meaning to everything he'd endured. "It's not just about giving Jack a job," Tom explained, spreading the revised business plan across his desk. "It's about leveraging what veterans already know." Mike studied the documents with a skeptical expression, while Jack stood by the whiteboard, where he'd sketched a modified organizational structure. "The military trains people in logistics, equipment maintenance, and disciplined operations," Tom continued. "Skills that transfer perfectly to what we're building." "I'm not against hiring veterans," Mike said carefully, "but restructuring our entire operation around it, that's a significant pivot from our original plan." Jack tapped the whiteboard. "Look at your current challenges: cash flow issues, maintenance backlogs, driver turnover. These are logistics problems we solved daily in the service. With specialized transport," Tom added, "the margin for error is minimal. Contaminated loads cost clients thousands. Veterans understand protocol adherence better than anyone." Mike rubbed his chin. "The training costs would be offset by reduced turnover," Tom countered. "Most of these guys are desperate for stability, not job-hopping opportunities. And the VA offers tax incentives for veteran hiring," Jack added. "Plus, on-the-job training subsidies." Tom leaned forward. "I'm not suggesting charity, Mike. I'm proposing a competitive advantage." "Who else is specifically recruiting this skilled labor pool?" Mike studied the projections again. "The housing component concerns me. Taking on residential property management wasn't in our business model." "Just the old caretaker's house on the edge of the lot," Tom explained. "It needs work, but Jack can oversee renovations. We'd offer it as transitional housing for veterans joining the team." Jack pointed to a section of the plan. "Many guys just need a stable address to receive benefits and rebuild their credit. 3 to 6 months of housing support can be the difference between success and homelessness." Tom watched the calculations happening behind Mike's eyes. His partner was practical but fair. The numbers would need to make sense. "Give me 1 quarter," Tom said. "If we don't see improvement in retention and operational efficiency, we'll reassess." Mike exhaled slowly. "All right, let's try this veterans initiative. But I want weekly metrics and a clear exit strategy if it doesn't perform." Tom extended his hand. "Agreed. We'll start recruiting next week." Lily paced the length of the construction trailer, phone pressed to her ear. Mark sat at the folding table, reviewing blueprints with increasing agitation. The trailer door opened, admitting a woman in a hard hat and safety vest. The embroidered logo read, "Transcontinental Pipeline Corporation." "Mr. Whitfield, I'm Patricia Delgado, Senior Infrastructure Inspector for Transcontinental." Lily ended her call abruptly. "Yes, Miss Delgado, we weren't expecting your visit today." "That's standard procedure," Delgado replied, placing a thick folder on the table. We're required to inspect any construction activities within 50 feet of our infrastructure. Mark looked up sharply. What infrastructure? Delgado unfolded a map, spreading it across the blueprints. Transcontinental operated an oil distribution network through this property from 1952 to 1975. The lines were decommissioned, but never removed. Lily's professional composure faltered. That's impossible. Our environmental assessment didn't flag any pipelines. Unfortunately, they wouldn't, Delgado explained. The documentation was only digitized last year, but the easement remains active in perpetuity. Mark's face reddened. What exactly does this mean for our project? Construction can't proceed until we complete a comprehensive inspection, Delgado said, removing more documents from her folder. We'll need to verify pipeline integrity hasn't been compromised and assess removal or remediation options. How long will that take? Lily asked, struggling to maintain her calm. Minimum 6 weeks for the inspection. If remediation is required, Delgado's expression suggested it wouldn't be simple. We'll need full access starting tomorrow. After Delgado left, Mark slammed his fist on the table. This wasn't in the title search. Who dropped the ball? The responsibility falls to the property owner, Lily said quietly. I didn't know. Your ex handled this yard for decades. He must have known about these pipelines. Lily went still. Tom never mentioned any pipelines. Convenient, Mark muttered. What else did he conveniently forget to mention when transferring the property? Tom's apartment had gradually transformed from a barren space to something resembling a home. Jack sat at the small dining table where Tom had prepared a simple meal of grilled chicken and vegetables. The oil company showed up today, Tom said, refilling their water glasses, at Lily and Mark's construction site. Jack paused mid-bite. The pipeline inspection? Tom nodded. Ray called me, said Lily looked like she'd seen a ghost. Can't say I blame her. Those remediation costs could run into millions. The knowledge should have brought satisfaction, a perfect justice for Lily's betrayal. Instead, Tom felt a strange emptiness where the anger had once lived. I could have warned her, he admitted, when I saw the groundbreaking announcement. Jack studied him. Why didn't you? Part of me wanted to see her plans collapse. Tom pushed his plate aside. But that's not who I want to be anymore. Revenge is a lousy foundation to build a life on, Jack said. Learned that the hard way. Tom's gaze drifted to the business plan spread across his living room. Notes about veteran recruitment, training programs, transitional housing, a vision larger than his own wounds. We interviewed 2 veterans today, Tom said, both homeless, both skilled mechanics. Their faces, when we discussed stable employment and housing. You're building something that matters, Jack said. That's a better legacy than watching someone else fail. Tom considered the path before him, the choice between nurturing resentment or creating purpose, between remaining defined by what he'd lost or becoming known for what he built. The land will sort itself out, Tom said finally. The pipelines, the liability, that's Lily and Mark's problem now. I'm focused on our next steps. Jack raised his glass. To building on solid ground. Tom clinked his glass against Jack's, a quiet certainty settling in his chest. Let the consequences of past decisions unfold naturally. His energy belonged to creating something of lasting value. 6 months later, the transformation was remarkable. The once modest transport facility now housed a fleet of 8 specialized vehicles, each bearing the Grayson Transport Solutions logo. The yard buzzed with purposeful activity as veterans moved with military precision through their morning routines. Tom watched from the dispatch office as Jack led the morning briefing. 23 employees now, 18 of them veterans who had found not just jobs, but purpose. "Henderson, you've got the Sierra run today," Jack called out. "Rodriguez and Phillips, Northeast Materials needs that specialized copper transport. Remember their contamination protocols." Tom stepped out into the yard as the teams dispersed to their vehicles. The morning sun glinted off the polished trucks, a point of pride for the crew who maintained them to exacting standards. "Morning, boss," called Dawson, a former Army mechanic who had been living in his car before joining the team. "That filter modification you suggested increased fuel efficiency by almost 8%. "Good work implementing it," Tom replied. "Any issues with the installation?" "None, sir. We've already retrofitted 6 trucks. Last 2 will be done by tomorrow." Beyond the main building, Tom could see construction underway on what had once been the caretaker's house. Now expanded into transitional housing, it provided temporary quarters for veterans joining the team until they secured stable housing. Mike approached, tablet in hand, looking more relaxed than he had in months. "Numbers from last quarter," he said, passing over the device. "We're up 32%, client retention at 97%. Tom scrolled through the report, satisfaction warming his chest. "The Veterans Initiative?" "I was skeptical," Mike admitted. "I was wrong. Turnover's practically zero, quality metrics are through the roof, and word-of-mouth referrals have doubled our client base." A bell rang across the yard, the signal that it was time for the daily team huddle. Employees gathered in a circle, some in uniforms, others in maintenance coveralls. "Today marks 6 months since we launched the Veterans Initiative," Tom announced. "I want to thank each of you for making this vision a reality." Applause broke out, with several veterans exchanging proud glances. "To celebrate," Tom continued, "I'm pleased to announce we've secured the Regional Recycling Authority contract. Starting next month, we'll be their exclusive transport provider." Cheers erupted. This contract would cement their financial stability for years to come. As the team dispersed, Tom felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had built something valuable, not just a business, but a community. From the ashes of personal rejection had emerged something far more meaningful than he could have imagined. $5 million? Lily's voice cracked with disbelief. "That can't be right." Patricia Delgado from Transcontinental Pipeline Corporation adjusted her glasses and gestured to the assessment report spread across the conference table. "I'm afraid the estimate is conservative. The contamination is extensive." Mark paced the development project office, face flushed with anger. "This is beyond remediation. This is a complete disaster." The banker, Harold Winters, studied the figures with a grim expression. "To be clear, Miss Delgado, these pipelines were abandoned but never properly decommissioned?" "Correct," Delgado confirmed. "Oil residue has leached into surrounding soil. EPA regulations require complete removal and soil remediation before any construction can proceed." "Which we can't afford," Mark snapped. Winters closed his portfolio. "First Meridian Bank cannot continue financing under these circumstances. The collateral value is now effectively negative, considering the liability." "We've already invested over $2 million, Lily protested. "Surely we can find a workable solution." "The environmental liability supersedes all other considerations," Winters replied. "I'm afraid we'll be calling in our existing loans." "You can't do that." Mark slammed his hand on the table. "We're leveraged against other properties." "Which is precisely our concern," the banker said, rising. "I'll need your plan for addressing this situation within 48 hours. After Winters left, Mark rounded on Lily. "Your ex-husband knew about this. He had to." The liability was clearly disclosed in the transfer agreement, Delgado interjected, pointing to a clause in the document. All subsurface conditions and associated liabilities were explicitly accepted by the new owner. Lily stared at the paper, recognition dawning. I never read the fine print. My lawyer said it was standard language. Standard language? Mark's voice rose dangerously. We're facing bankruptcy, and you're telling me you didn't read the fine print? There's no possibility of partial development? Lily asked Delgado desperately. The inspector shook her head. The contamination affects the entire property. Nothing can be built until it's addressed. Mark sank into a chair. We're finished. Completely finished. Tom looked up from his desk as Ray entered his office, waving a newspaper. Have you seen this? The headline read, West Side Shopping Center Project Collapses Amid Environmental Crisis. Below it, a smaller headline, Whitfield Development Faces Bankruptcy, Property to be Auctioned. Just came out this afternoon, Ray said, clearly enjoying the moment. Couldn't have happened to nicer people. Tom read the article carefully. The pipeline remediation costs had forced Lily and Mark's company into bankruptcy. The property, his former recycling yard, would be sold at auction to satisfy creditors. Jack appeared in the doorway, having overheard. Karma's something, isn't it? Mike joined them, studying the article over Tom's shoulder. That property's going to sell for pennies on the dollar with that liability attached. A thoughtful silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. We could buy it back, Mike said finally. With the regional contract secured, we have the capital. We understand the remediation issues better than anyone else would. Tom looked around at his team, at what they'd built together from nothing. It's not about buying it back, he said slowly. It's about what we could create there. Jack nodded, immediately understanding. The transitional housing is already at capacity. With that much land, we could do something bigger. A veterans center, Tom suggested, the vision forming as he spoke. Housing, training facilities, support services. That's a major pivot from transport, Mike cautioned, though his tone suggested interest rather than opposition. Tom spread out a map of the city, pointing to their current location, and then to the former recycling yard. Not a pivot. An expansion. The transport business continues as our foundation, but we use the profits to fund something larger. A foundation, Jack repeated thoughtfully, literally and figuratively. The cleanup cost would be substantial, Mike noted, already calculating. But with our connections to recycling clients, we might be able to negotiate more favorable terms than a typical developer. As the men discussed possibilities, Tom felt a deep sense of rightness. The property that had once defined his past could become the foundation for many futures, not just his own, but for veterans who needed a second chance. Let's look into it, he decided, not for revenge or reclamation, but because it's the right opportunity at the right time. The attorney's office was unnecessarily formal for a bankruptcy auction purchase, but Daniel Reeves had insisted on proper documentation for the foundation's first major acquisition. Tom sat at one end of the conference table, Mike and Jack flanking him. At the opposite end, Lily looked diminished in a simple business suit, her usual confidence replaced by wary resignation. Mark Whitfield sat beside her, barely containing his resentment. The court-appointed bankruptcy trustee completed the gathering. The property transfer from Whitfield Development to Grayson Veterans Foundation has been approved by the bankruptcy court, Reeves announced, sliding documents across the polished surface. The purchase price of $350,000 reflects both the market value and acknowledged environmental liabilities. Mark made a choked sound. That property was worth millions before the pipeline issue, the trustee interjected. The current value accounts for approximately $5 million in remediation costs. Tom signed where indicated, his signature steady and purposeful. He felt no triumph at acquiring the property at a fraction of its value, only a sense of rightness that the land would serve a greater purpose. With the foundation accepting all associated liabilities, Reeves continued, Whitfield Development will be released from environmental obligations, though other creditor claims remain outstanding. Lily signed next, her hand trembling slightly. What exactly does the Grayson Veterans Foundation do? She asked, looking directly at Tom for the first time. It's new, Tom replied evenly, established to create housing, training, and support services for veterans transitioning to civilian life. A charity? Mark's tone suggested disbelief. A purpose, Tom corrected. He handed a folder to the trustee. These are our remediation plans. We've partnered with EnviroCorp for specialized pipeline removal and several recycling facilities for materials processing. The trustee reviewed the documents with raised eyebrows. This is comprehensive. You've clearly done your homework. I understand that land, Tom said simply, both what's on it and what's beneath it. As the final documents were signed, Lily's gaze remained fixed on Tom, confusion evident in her expression. She had expected vindictiveness, not this calm purposefulness. Congratulations, Mr. Grayson, Reeves said, collecting the papers. The property is now officially owned by the foundation. Tom nodded, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. Not just remediation, but transformation. The coffee shop sat equidistant between Tom's office and the bus stop Lily now used. Neutral territory. Tom arrived early, selecting a corner table with Jack. When Lily entered, her hesitation was visible. Gone was the polished real estate entrepreneur, replaced by someone trying to rebuild after financial collapse. She approached cautiously, as if expecting a trap. "Thank you for coming," Tom said, gesturing to the empty chair. "I wasn't sure I should," Lily admitted, sitting stiffly. "Mark thought it was a bad idea." "Mark isn't here," Jack observed, his tone matter-of-fact rather than accusatory. Tom pushed a folder across the table. "The foundation needs someone to manage our housing program." Lily stared at him. "What?" "We'll have transitional units for veterans, permanent supportive housing, and eventually home-buying assistance," Tom explained. "It needs coordination by someone with real estate knowledge." Lily's confusion deepened. "You're offering me a job?" "A responsibility," Tom clarified. "You understand housing markets, property management, tenant relations, skills the foundation needs. Why would you, after what I did?" She faltered, color rising in her cheeks. Jack leaned forward. "Tom's not offering charity. He's being practical. The foundation needs your expertise. Is this some kind of revenge, watching me work for you after—" "This isn't about our past," Tom interrupted. "It's about creating something meaningful for people who need it. If you're not interested—" "I didn't say that," Lily said quickly. "I just don't understand." Tom met her gaze steadily. "People deserve second chances when they're willing to work for them. The veterans we're helping understand that. So do I." Lily opened the folder, studying the job description with growing interest. "This is real," she said softly, almost to herself. "Very real," Jack confirmed, "and challenging. These veterans need stability, not promises that fall through." The implication wasn't lost on Lily. She looked up with newfound resolve. "When would you need an answer?" "Take the weekend," Tom suggested. "The foundation breaks ground next month." As they parted outside the coffee shop, Lily paused. "Tom, thank you for seeing something in me worth salvaging." He nodded, recognizing the first genuine moment between them in years. A month later, the former recycling yard hummed with activity. A remediation equipment stood ready at one end, while a temporary stage had been erected at the other. Chairs, filled with veterans, community members, and local officials, faced the podium where Tom prepared to speak. Architectural renderings displayed the planned Veterans Community Center, housing units, training facilities, communal spaces, and support service offices. What had once been a simple recycling yard would become a lifeline for those who had served their country. Tom surveyed the gathering, spotting familiar faces. Mike sat in the front row with Ray. Jack stood nearby with several veterans from their transport company. Even Lily was present, having accepted the housing coordinator position, standing somewhat apart but engaged. 3 years ago, Tom began, I stood on this property believing my life's work had been taken from me. Today, I realize it was simply waiting for its true purpose. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the audience. The Grayson Veterans Foundation isn't about one person's vision, but about creating opportunity for those who have already given so much. Every veteran deserves the chance to build a civilian life with dignity and purpose. He gestured to the veterans present. These men and women understand that what others discard often contains the greatest value. They know that with the right support, what seems broken can be transformed into something essential. Tom stepped away from the podium, joining Jack and the veterans for the ceremonial groundbreaking. Together, they lifted the shovels, not unlike those used at another ceremony months earlier, but with profoundly different purpose. As the shovels bit into the earth, Tom felt the completion of a circle. The land that had once defined his past now promised future hope for others. From personal rejection had emerged community connection. From loss had come purpose larger than he could have imagined. The Veterans Center would stand as testament to a simple truth. What lies beneath the surface, whether pipeline or potential, eventually reveals itself. And with vision and determination, even the most damaged ground could support new foundations. 6 months after the groundbreaking, Tom stood on the observation deck of the completed Veterans Center, watching the community that had blossomed where his recycling yard once stood. The courtyard below buzzed with purposeful activity. Veterans attending training sessions, families moving into permanent housing units, volunteers tending the community garden. What had once been discarded was now essential. The transformation of the land mirrored his own journey. Thinking deep thoughts, Jack approached, now the center's operations director. "Just remembering where we started," Tom replied. "When Lily handed me those divorce papers at her graduation, I thought my life was over." Jack nodded toward a group of veterans learning computer skills. "Instead, dozens of lives are just beginning." In the distance, Tom spotted Lily leading a homebuyer workshop for veterans transitioning to permanent housing. Her expertise, once focused solely on personal gain, now created pathways to stability for others. Her growth had been as surprising as his own. "You know what I've learned?" Tom said quietly. "When someone rejects you, they're not determining your value, just expressing their own limitations. And what looks like an ending is often just redirection," Jack added. Tom watched a veteran and his young family receiving keys to their first apartment, the man's face reflecting the dignity of having a safe place to call home. The most precious things in life weren't possessions or status, but the opportunity to create value for others. Pain transformed into purpose held power beyond any revenge or bitterness. Below, the community gathered for their weekly meal, veterans, staff, volunteers sharing food and stories. From individual wounds had emerged collective healing. "We build on what lies beneath us," Tom observed. "The good and the bad, the pipes and the potential." "And sometimes," Jack smiled, "what others throw away becomes the foundation for everything that matters."